Okay, today on the show, we have Patrick Kilner from Kilner and Kirk Group in Maryland. Let me tell you about Pat. Now, Pat Kilner is an 18-year veteran of the real estate industry and is also the founder and CEO of Kilner and Kirk Real Estate. Now, Kilner and Kirk is one of very few teams nationally, and this is amazing, to have total lifetime sales, wait, pregnant pause, dramatic pause of over $2 billion. $2 billion. Pat's team has done between 70 million and 100 million in volume every year for the past 10 years without Pat going to a single appointment. I'm going to say that again, 70 million to 100 million in volume over the past 10 years per year without Pat ever going to an appointment. Now, Pat also has a brand new book, which is called Find Your Six, Stop Lead Generating and Start Building Influence, which debuted as a #1 new release on Amazon. We encourage everyone to go out and purchase this book. In fact, we have a link to the Amazon page right in our show notes. So please go take a look at Find Your Six and learn more about the book and everything related to Pat Kilner at findyoursix.com. And that's find your SIX spelled out, findyoursix.com. That link is also in our show notes for the podcast episode here. So Pat, welcome to the show.
DJ, it's great to be here.
Pat and I were talking just before we got on, and I could feel like I could talk to Pat all day. And I apologize because I was running a little bit late. And Pat is just such an enjoyable guy. So I'm really excited to learn more about you. So let's start at the beginning before you had all this amazing, wild success. How did you get started in real estate? First of all, yeah, why real estate? And then how did you get started?
I think like most really good things, real estate sort of found me. They say like when you get into writing books, right? They say a book finds you. Well, real estate, I think, found me as well. And I would say quite accidentally, really. I was doing the post-grad school, just back from grad school and trying to figure out what to do with myself and handing my resume out to everybody that I knew. My dad said, you got to go talk to this guy. He could run for the mayor of this town, right? That local town here. He knows everybody. And so you got to go talk to him. So I went in and talked to Rory and I said, Rory, here's what I do. And, I speak Spanish. I'd lived in Spain for 3 years, did my master's there. And I've got a master's degree in economics and, all this stuff. And so here's my curriculum vitae. Like, who can you introduce me to? And he goes, why don't you come work for me? And it turns out that Rory had his own brokerage, his own small boutique brokerage.
And you had never thought about real estate?
I had not, to that point, I had not thought about real estate. But my dad was planting some seeds, and my dad had said to me a few weeks prior to that, Pat, my only recommendation to you, because I have not done this, and here's what I've seen in terms of success, is to get into an industry that you can envision yourself being in for the next 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Because the people who I know who have been in the same industry for extended periods of time, they're the people who do the best by their family financially. They're the ones really doing super well in their 40s or 50s and their 60s because they've run that race and they've developed themselves and their cachet, if you will, in that industry. And so if I could go back and do anything else, that's what I would do. By the way, you should go talk to this person, this person, and this person. And Rory was one of those. So I didn't have a better offer on the table. I was newly married and feeling pretty humbled by a really tough job market at the time. It's early 2000s. And said, what the heck? I'll go get my real estate license. Little did I know the market that I was getting into. It was totally insane. This was what was building up to the mortgage crisis.
Sure.
Anybody could buy a house.
Interest only loans.
Interest only, no doc, right? Like you walk in here, if you can fog a mirror, we will give you a house, even though you can't get into that rental down the street, right? So it was totally nuts. And of course, you don't know anything. You get into the business and you're like, oh, this must be how business is. Yeah. So you can talk to anybody and everybody wants to buy a house because it seems like the thing to do. And those are the days when, 4 or 5 times more inventory is on the market than is on today in the DC metro area. And so there's plenty of homes and there's even more people who want to buy homes. So that's the market that I got into. Tried my hand at some commercial because I didn't know which way I wanted to go. I didn't have a good mentor initially either. And so that's I got in and struggled really, really. I mean, it was really tough first couple of years. I remember my wife saying to me like, "Hey, if this is real estate and this is a stress level you have to have, I think you need to go find something else. You're really well
Yeah.
qualified for other things." So it's not all, coming up daisies right away.
Yeah, because and I don't mean to interrupt you, but with your background and your sort of the pedigree that you have, I mean, I'm thinking consultant, I'm thinking, middle management, finance right away, or some working at a corporation doing. I mean, you're an economics guy and a finance guy, so seems like you'd fit very nicely into the corporate world and just sort of, going that route, and didn't go that way.
I wish you would have talked to me back when I was 25. But I didn't, and serendipitously, I am so glad, by the way, that I got into real estate. This has been an amazing career, but it's a very odd. I remember telling my friends who I had just graduated with what I was doing. They're like, really? You're getting into residential real estate? Like, that's what my mom did after we all,
went to college,
went to school, right? So that's, this is 18 years ago as well. I think that the industry has changed, I think, for the better in acquiring young talent into the industry earlier on. And that I think it's a really, really great thing to get into, but you eat what you kill in this industry. You've got to go out there and make it happen. And so, that was where a lot of the stress came from initially.
Sure.
Hey, you're perfectly qualified to go get a job that can pay this mortgage. Can we please pay the mortgage? Right. And that's how I think a lot of us start. Right. And fighting against that. And you move from survival to some stability, and then stability builds on stability. And what I've realized in this industry is that you create your own stability. And here in DC, we've got all sorts of amazing fields that people get into. And I've seen plenty of those people who thought they were perfectly fine. Their job was as solid as it could possibly come, especially government, right? Jobs or government related jobs. And all of a sudden they're looking for a job. So we create our own stability, and I wouldn't trade the stability that I've been able to create in this industry for the world.
The freedom also that you get to enjoy, and I don't mean that you don't work hard, because of course you do, and you work inarguably harder as a solo practitioner or as your own sort of entity in real estate. And certainly as you have a company and you have to manage and you have to do lots of different things. But I would be curious, do you find that, yes, maybe financially it would have been not as advantageous to stay at do a more traditional corporate job, finance or economics or something during that sort of that path, but a lot of stability, probably a lot of I go home at a certain time, I can turn it off. And I get to retire at a certain age, and maybe I get to retire at 60, 65. I have friends who are been in corporate finance, and they're retiring in their 50s, and I don't think they're in love so much with their profession or the company they work for, but it doesn't seem to be as stressful. So there is a bit of a trade-off, but I think the freedom, sort of an ironic freedom, you get freedom around your schedule, but just economic freedom is so much better when you really fully commit to real estate. If you figure out a way to turn it into an actual business, as opposed to just a job that you're sort of punching a clock and working with the next client and just kind of starting over at the beginning of the month. So I'm curious on your thoughts about the freedom that you've now enjoyed. Yes, tremendous stress, but also tremendous freedom.
Yeah, but there's no situation in which I would have been able to write a book if I didn't have the freedom that building a business, and in particular in real estate, has allowed me to. Right. So because I am no longer client facing, it allows me to be far more creative and to use a lot of the economics that I still have and enjoy using, and the research side of things that I enjoy deeply. So yeah, there's tremendous freedom in that. And I think there's sort of three types of agents. There's, solo agents. There's agents who talk about having a business, who are really running a really big practice, because you get hit by a bus, all of a sudden the business is gone. So to my mind, that's not really a business. That's a really profitable practice oftentimes. And that's what most people have. And then there's very few who have a business, meaning you get hit by a bus and the business keeps creating revenue without you. And so at different levels, you enjoy different levels of freedom. And so, before I was running a business truly, there's no way I would have been able to write a book. I could do a lot of other things. I'd say the freedom as a father, the freedom to be able to spend time, and to be creative about when I use my time as dad and as husband has been immense and tremendously fruitful. But I'm really competitive. So I had to teach myself that through the School of Hard Knocks to prioritize family over this business as well. Because I, as we all know, it can become an obsession.
Yeah, it can. And I always think too, freedom comes through like discipline and structure, oddly enough, sort of counterintuitively. 100%. I know that. Yeah, like I just got back from the gym. I talk about this a lot on the show because I oftentimes schedule interviews right after I get back from the gym, so it's just fresh in my mind. So I apologize for our listeners for giving.
That's why your energy level is so good when you're
maybe, or I'm just wildly have some sort of chemical imbalance. Either way, could be that. But either way, but yeah, thank you. But what I will say about the gym is I struggled with going to the gym, and I just use this as a metaphor for people to maybe think about different habits that they want in their life that they find it very hard to adopt. Mm-hmm. Things that we all know we should do and we don't do. Going to the gym for me has always been a struggle. I just don't like it. It's painful. I just isn't something that I would ever choose to do, which is funny because I've tried to get myself to do it for years and years. And it wasn't until I hired a trainer, which is very expensive, crazy expensive, and really kind of a bummer to write the check every month. But it gets me to the gym. And through that structure for the last 2 years, she and I realized we'd been doing it for 2 years. I haven't missed one time. And I am telling you, I'm 46. For up until 44, I would have been like, I know I should go to the gym, and I'm kind of beating myself up that I don't, but I just wouldn't. And so because I have that structure in place where I just have a standing appointment with her 3 times a week, I never have to think about it again. I have to go there and do the work, and that sucks. But I don't have to think about it. I just have to go. And because I have somebody else who's going to show up and she's going to charge me whether I'm there or not, I better show up. And it's so expensive that there's no way I'm not showing up. So oddly, yes, it sucks to pay for it because God, I don't even want to, I'd be embarrassed to tell you how much it costs. But the reality of it is I can't do it on my own. And so that actually is like, it's actually like weight off of my mind. I don't have to think about it. So I'm only making
what's the opportunity cost to you, your long-term health of not paying that money?
I have more energy. Yeah, no, it all makes sense. So for sure it's like, but I just don't have to struggle with the beating myself up because I didn't go. Do you know what I mean? So I think what a lot of times agents think about is they struggle with structure. And of course they do. There's no structure in place for an agent unless they have a coach or they have a great trainer or a great brokerage that really helps them, or they're just naturally good at it. Or because most of us, I think real estate is so much a personality sort of extroverted for most people. I think they like hanging out with people and being of service, and those are all great qualities that aren't always the same qualities that are good for structure. And so I think if there's one thing we've learned after all these years on the show is creating structure has just been really helpful to actually give people more freedom, ironically.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things I'll ask folks as we're looking to onboard is, what time do you wake up in the morning?
Yeah.
And okay, what do the first few hours of your day look like?
Right.
Just walk me through that. Not a Saturday, like a work day. What does it look like? Because somebody's priorities by what they put earlier in the day, hopefully, right? Is it checking Facebook, or is it, are you getting to the gym, or are you, is there meditation? Is there whatever it is, right? Are you hydrating? Whatever it is that you need to do in order to click into a really high performing productivity, because nobody else is going to tell you in this business when to be somewhere.
Right.
And so you need to have that discipline yourself. And that starts literally from the time you wake up. And so, the next question is, okay, what time do you get to bed?
Right.
So, because if that's what's your ideal day look like, you're waking up at 6 a.m. Okay, well, what time do you have to get to bed in order to do that consistently? Oh, I don't need sleep. Okay, let's see how long that lasts. So the beauty of this is the freedom, and the Achilles heel is the freedom if you don't use it well, for sure.
Let's talk about the book, because I am so excited about this book. And
Thank you.
I really am. And I haven't, unfortunately, had the chance to read it yet. So I apologize to our audience, but that's what you're here to talk about. So I want to first, and again, remind people the name of the book is called Find Your Six. And the idea behind it is to stop doing as much lead generation and start doing a little bit more influence. I guess we would say, sort of proactive marketing versus attraction, creating so much value that people are just instantly or over time attracted to want to work with you. I remember when I was a financial advisor a million years ago, I heard one of the top financial advisors in our office, who had been doing it 30 years, says, if you have to ask for the sale, you're probably doing it wrong. And if you do it right, people go, how do I sign up? How do I give you all of my money to invest? And I thought, well, that's easy for you. You've been doing this 30 years. He's like, no, you just have to be good. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to actually be providing value. But let's talk about the book. Tell us what it's about, and how agents can start thinking differently about influence.
Yeah, and this is very much a real estate book. I mean, this is through the blood, sweat, and tears of really figuring out how to get through the crash of 2008, 2009. And that's sort of where I start with the book. So let's back up for a second. I became very interested in what made really high performers excellent at their careers. And so I began interviewing people who had been going at their careers well into their 60s, sort of, in the twilight of their careers for the most part. And I found the 60 most successful people I could possibly find, all very high performers across different industries. And I interviewed them, and I said, I'm curious. I want to understand who have been the people who've been fundamental to your success over the course of your career. Let's talk about that story arc of your career. And we talked as long as it took them. And I took copious notes, and I recorded the interviews. And at the end of those 60 interviews, what I realized is that the average number of wildly influential relationships to them that had made their careers what they were just 6. It wasn't 600. It wasn't 6,000. It wasn't 1 million, right? It wasn't like, how many Facebook followers did you have, right? That didn't matter. What mattered was a handful of really amazing vision-aligned relationships that in many ways, they almost felt like this is just total serendipity. How did I happen across them? And so hence the 6. That's why find your 6. It's oftentimes why people ask, one of the first things they'll say is, why find your 6? And when I first got in the business, the first thing that was told to me is that no leads, no business, right? And we all, we're in lead generation. I have a column still in my chart of accounts that is lead generation spending, right? I'm like, I wrote a book basically condemning the concept of lead generation, but that's how ubiquitous it is. What's really interesting is that we've only begun speaking about lead generation. That word, we've only started using that since 1976. We didn't actually talk about acquisition of new relationships as leads, right? Those incredible relationships that we have the honor in real estate to work with as leads. We shifted, and all of a sudden, and most industries did, by the way, financial industry, right? Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, right? That's 1980s. All these things, Wolf of Wall Street, 1980s, 1990s, right? All of this comes out of a lead generation mindset, which is basically the relationship between us and the consumer is a commodity. And we just need as many of those as possible to do as much business as possible. Knock doors. Yeah. It's a numbers game. Knock doors, pound phones, whatever it is. And I did all of that as a new agent. Sure. And I was getting awards. My broker's like, hey, this is great, young guy. My gosh, there's people, I wish they've been in this business for 20, 30 years. I wish they could produce as much as you. And I'm like, wow, I hate this. This is soul stripping work. If I have to knock on another door, I think I'll just change careers. And it wasn't that I just didn't like it. It's just that I wasn't having the type of relationships with those types of folks that I was having when people would refer me. People who trusted me implicitly would refer me. Totally different.
And not just because it's easier to get the referral clients. I want to make that point clear, because of course it's easier in a sense, but it's a better culture fit for you, because those are people who are probably very similar to the even if they didn't automatically know you from a friend of theirs, which of course is great. You're not there's some sort of inherent sort of similarity of sorts with that previous client that is likely to be a fit personality wise, I'm guessing.
Well, and I think there's a question of longevity in this business. Like, if you're going to do this for 20, 30 years, as my dad, said I should do, or more, what kind of business development do you really want to do?
Right. Do you want to be the guy knocking on doors? Right.
So I remember asking, I was teaching a class, some of my own agents, some other business owners, and I remember saying, okay, we're halfway through the year. Let's talk about your business plan. What was your goal at the beginning of the year? You're here, 6 months in. What's the gap between where you are, where you want to be? And they all wrote that down. And then I said, okay, what lead generation tactic do you have in your back pocket that you're going to use for the next 6 months to bridge that gap?
Yeah.
And they all wrote that down. And then I said, this is where it sort of struck me. I was just curious because I was starting to research the book. I said, now, those of you who wrote that down, all of you, how many of you would be deeply excited to do that tactic every day, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week for the next 3 years or 5 years? Not a hand. 40 people in the room, not a hand.
We know that it can work because people have done it, and we're not going to debate whether it works or not. We're just going to say, let's assume it works. And are you going to be a happy person doing this?
Yeah. And not a hand. I mean, some very accomplished people, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, there's something wrong with the way we think about business development. It's like, it's drudgery. What if you could come up with a way that you could do business development for the next 20 years and be excited to do it every single day? What would that do to your business? What would that do to just how you show up to your family? That's the essence of Find Your Six. And to me, if you can do business in a way that allows you to really have great joy at this game, well, then, you're living a much, much fuller life. As far as I know, we only get one shot at this. What's also really interesting is, well, who does lead generation better than anybody? Right? Who produces more leads? Or maybe a better question is, who do you pay for your leads?
Right. Yeah. I was going to say Zillow, OpCity, Redfin.
Exactly.
These are lead corporations. These are lead companies. And that's not a pejorative term. It's not negative. It's just the truth. I came from a background prior to this where we were in the health insurance lead space, essentially. And we were generating 15,000 health insurance leads a day, people who needed to buy health insurance, realtors oftentimes were in that group. And so I was in the lead gen business, and that's what Zillow and again, that's a good thing. That's what they do.
It's an amazing mousetrap. It's better than anything you could possibly build on your own. You're
not going to compete.
I got into the business, oddly enough, the same year that Zillow got into the business. Right. This is before the brokers had IDX agreements, right?
Sure.
So not all of the MLS data was shared across everybody's websites.
Websites, yeah.
So the world has changed significantly in the last 18 years. But I mean, how many travel agents do you know?
Yeah. I think there's still a few, because once in a while I'll drive by, a storefront that says it. I'm like, hey, look at that.
Right.
I've never met one, and I don't know if there's anyone in that building. But yeah, that's pretty much gone away.
That used to be a thing, right? Like people I'm a travel agent. There was multiple hundreds of thousands of people in the travel agency business
making good livings,
fantastic livings, relatively gone. The only people who are left are people who have niche relationships that you can't get by going onto Travelocity.
Right.
And that's why you use them. If we are, as agents, not figuring out how to disruption proof our business development, Zillow's going to eat your lunch.
Of course. Absolutely. Because, and by the way, that makes sense because what they provide, and I know people have very strong feelings, positive and negative, about Zillow, and I'm not here to take any side at all. But there is a sense of they're taking something from me. And my thought has always been, probably not. If you're an agent that provides exceptional value, that's not what they do. They provide value for looking at homes and connecting you with an agent who wants to get your business. They're good at that. They're excellent, and they're the best at it. But are they good at walking somebody all the way through the process of home ownership or selling a property? No, that's not what they do. They're a lead company. So that's not their forte. And thank goodness, thank God they haven't cracked that code, because it means that the realtor is still front and center and absolutely important for every step of the transaction.
100%. But if you find yourself in your drive home from showing that house, wondering how you can compete with Zillow, you're probably doing the wrong type of business development. Yeah. And lead generation is just a blip on the radar screen historically in the history of how people have generated business.
Right.
So what I really wanted to know when I wrote this book was I wanted to talk to people who had weathered their own disruptions in their own industries. And pretty much every service industry we know of, and every goods industry we know of, has been disrupted in the last 40 years. So I figured, let's go talk to those people in different industries and figure out who are the people that have made them disruption proof. Because that's really when you find the right people who refer you business, who can only think of you as their agent, you don't need a ton of them. I've built a pretty darn good business with just a handful of amazing relationships. But we are not practiced at finding those relationships. So the thought process here, and what I realized about sort of my own journey, was that I was fortunate enough to find my six in a very short period of time, which is why I was able to survive 2008, 2009. And as I talked to these folks, what I realized is they were all talking about the same characteristics of the talent that they were looking for to affiliate themselves with. So you're no longer in a lead generation business, you're in a talent business. And if you can find the right talent to align yourself with, it's game over. And Zillow is not in that business.
Right. And nor are they interested in that business. They're interested in capturing people who are searching online, and they become the search engine, and they capture that person's information and sell it. And that's not a bad thing. And it doesn't compete with a realtor who it provides tremendous value. It's just a totally different world, probably a different client as well.
Amen. Couldn't agree more. And, gosh, NAR numbers have only gone up since the inception of Zillow. So, there's plenty of agents getting into this business simultaneous with the growth of lead generation, outfits like Zillow.
It is funny too when Zillow had they've had some poor press in the last year with their iBuyer program and all of that, and what's interesting is when you go to and I love Lab Code Agents as a community. I think it's excellent. I love those guys. They've been on our show. They're awesome, really nothing but love for Lab Code Agents, and what they've built is like beyond amazing. Everybody should go subscribe to that Facebook group. They've got 150,000 agents in it anyway. But when that news happened, it was depressing to me because I saw nothing but glee and joy from people saying, "Ha ha, Zillow, screw you. You've been screwing me over for years." And it's like, really? Like that's, and these are probably some really successful agents. And it was just flooded with thousands of comments. And I was like, I actually feel bad for Zillow because I don't think of them. I actually know a lot of people who work there. I feel bad. Like, are you okay? And it's interesting. I never thought of them as competition.
Well, I mean, and you talk about disruption, right? Zillow's just a disruptor.
That's
right?
it.
And thank God we live in an era where there can be disruption to industries. That's how business gets better. Like from an economic standpoint, the way that we actually get better is to have competition and people coming in and going, really? Is that really why what your value is? Like if your value is finding the house, I mean, come on. No, you're a negotiation expert. You're a marketing guru. You're much more than just somebody who had a bunch of houses back here that I'm not going to show you unless you sign my paperwork. Well, that's a silly proposition. And the consumer should see that as completely absurd. Versus, I am a fiduciary who's going to guide your decision making such that once we're done with this, you won't believe how fortunate you were that I was in your corner. And you'll think to yourself, and you'll refer me by saying, the cost of not having DJ in that deal was not just monetary, because he's worth much more than I could have ever paid for him. But it was also a place where our family lives now, and a place where we create memories. And that's where we sit as agents. And if we confuse that with what we're actually supposed to be doing, then I think we're in for a world of hurt. But I think that's why people get into this business, because they really deeply want to sit in that chair with that family, and which is a place of real honor and tremendous dignity for both the person giving that type of service and the person receiving it. That's something that tech can't do and won't ever be able to do. Right. So the question is, and this is what I was most curious about, is I want to be referred that way every single time. What would that look like? What would that feel like? How much less can I spend on lead generation and more on client service and more on a few really important relationships? And so that's where I take things in the book. And the book is really just, here's how to understand the talent that you're looking for. And then here's systematically how to go find them as well. And that's the last part of the book.
And when we're talking about talent, we're talking about finding your six, finding those few, we'll say, shallow but deep water, right? So what we're wanting is a very specific type of relationship, which there's a process to finding Absolutely. These people. In your case, you interviewed people, you sort of went the Napoleon Hill route from the old Think and Grow Rich from 100 years ago, which was about, he did the same thing. He went out and interviewed like the 100 most successful people in the world at that time, or the country, and learned a lot, and then realized, oh, there's a series of principles here that seem to apply to everybody, and let's write a book about it. And it's become probably the best-selling self-help book of all time. Yep. As a result. So even if all you did was go out and interview all these successful people that you admire, did you find that your six were among the 50 that you interviewed, or were they different relationships? Because I know that you've got the idea of, all of these really successful people have six relationships, or seemingly have these six important cornerstone relationships. Did any of those people end up becoming part of your six?
It's a great question. So, yes, a few, and I kind of go through the math of it. So look, I'm running a business simultaneous to writing a book. I need a lot of this I can't just do the book, right? I've got a business, and books, by the way, don't make you any money. So, so yes, I mean, it was partially that, you're really investing into relationships, and frankly, if you did that once a day, you had one great meeting with somebody who could be a candidate for your top of the, I have a paradigm in here called the influencer pyramid. And so most of the people that are not going to be wildly influential for your business. The problem is a lead generation mindset will tell us, everybody go and put him in your database, and you're gonna smile and dial. You're gonna hit them once a month with this and that and the other thing. Well, the reality is they don't want to hear from you that much. And most of those people are not going to be influential enough. So once you understand the talent that you're looking for, you're not going to go spend time with people at the bottom of the pyramid, or that much time with people in the middle of the pyramid. You're only going to go focus on people who are candidates for the top of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is where your six reside. And so, who did I find? Let's sort of take the gloves off for a real estate audience. I talk to audiences who are not in real estate, but who should we be looking for? Who are the people, for us in the DC metro area? Some of my biggest sort of people who rose to the top of my influencer pyramid have been had a great relationship early on, and I was just so amazed at this one. Great tax attorney, and he did business law and tax, and he was a connector, and so he connected me to all sorts of other great people. He came to me, and we did events together, and he'd bring his best people, and I'd bring my best people, and we'd network everybody together. And he sent me, gosh, he'd send me 8, 10 deals a year.
And that's huge.
Yeah. So if you think about, if you had 6 people who send you 10 deals a year, I mean, that's, most agents would like lose their mind.
You're a top 1% producer at that point.
Absolutely. So that's the type of relationship I'm looking for. We found this in some builder relationships.
Sure.
Right? Makes sense. There's a lot of, think about the top people in almost any market. They have some really great builder relationships, whether it's infill builders or people on raw, fresh dirt, and they're talking to you, the NARs of the world. That was a game changer for us. And so we went specifically looking for the type of talent they were looking for in that sphere. I oftentimes talk to agents and they're like, so I've got this guy and I've been working on him for years, and it's just, he could be so huge for my business. Well, if you've been working for years and there's not enough vision alignment with where you want to go, and you're not providing enough value for that person to see you as a consummate professional that they would refer over the other 20 real estate agents that they know, then move on. But unless you're in the game of talent, I mean, you guys, you are in the game of talent in your brokerage, right? Every single day you're having conversations. You're looking for the right people, the right fit. There's got to be a vision alignment. There's got to be people who value what you value.
Yep.
And once you know that there's that cultural fit, they'll tell their friends about you. They'll be excited about it. And so there's a natural build that happens. That's what happens when you find your 6 as well.
Well, I know we're closing in on the end here, and I wish we weren't, because I would like to continue talking about this, but it's a great sort of place to remind everybody this is why he wrote a book. So go get this book. And honestly, this is such a unique idea. It's not something that, look, I've been doing this show. We've done 350 something episodes. I have yet to really have this particular conversation around, yes, we talk about marketing and branding, and really what we're talking about is branding to our sphere of influence, our database. And generally speaking, the way that most agents, even top 1% agents, do it is, yes, and of course they value all their relationships. And I'm in no way criticizing this, but what they'll do is they have a system. There's mailers that go out. There's emails, maybe a text. There's some social media postings. There's a lot of that, but it's kind of blanketed across, possibly hundreds of people. And again, it works to a degree. It works. You do get referrals that way, but it is time intensive. It's energy intensive. It's not as personalized. And it doesn't, it's not really an attraction model. It's more of a fishing model. I'm going to cast my net, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's of course a perfectly fine strategy, and it absolutely works. But this idea of attract, I want to give you this because I want to hear Patrick's take on this. This is something I heard of. It blew my mind 21 years ago. I was a financial advisor, and I heard they had hired these guys from Merrill Lynch to come over and tell us this. They had written a book, and they said, here's what you need to do. And I know you're going to love this. And it was the scariest idea to me at the time. I was a young kid. They said, go find the client, whatever clients you have in your business, and the ones you really like, the ones that you think are just really cool, great people, somewhat influential, but whatever. They're just good human beings, and they like you. So we take them out for coffee and say, hey, I am trying to work on my marketing for this next year. I want to work with people just like you. However, I'm not totally sure how to get in front of more people like you. Do you have any advice about what you might do if you were me? And it was like, well, that's just so brilliant. And And, you'll do that. And some people will say, I don't know, I can't. And then, okay, fine. But some people will be like, oh man, you need to come hang out with me at such and such place. All my buddies are going to be there and you're awesome. And we'd love to, and you're not asking people for referrals. You're not asking them for business. You're just saying, can you help me? And I'm curious to get your take on that, because it sounds like that is very synergistic with what you're talking about.
It's foundational. And yeah, when you ask for advice the right way, you almost never get rejected.
It's the most flattering thing you can ask of anyone.
When was the last time somebody said, DJ,
Never.
Can I please, you don't get offended. You say, wow, I'd love to. You might be really busy. You might have to kick it back. The busier people,
Sure.
Okay, that meeting's going to be in a month, but that's fine. Let's put it on the calendar, right? Oh, they missed because they were too busy. Schedule it again. Now they feel like they owe you one. Great. Go do that. So I'm a huge fan of that idea. I speak to that. Chapter 4 of my book talks about how to make the ask to get in front of people, because we're actually unpracticed at this.
Yeah, totally.
We spend a lot of time behind screens, and we're really good at concocting just the right thing to put on that screen. We're really bad at getting people just to meet with us face to face, especially post-COVID, right?
Yep.
Face to face, person to person, and connecting deeply with people, authentically with people, and not sounding like you're pitching, and actually never pitching. And so, yes, I love that. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is, yes, this really is a high leverage activity, but you're going to spend about as much time on this as you would on your other lead generation strategies. You're just going to enjoy it a whole lot more. So it's going to feel that much. Why? Because we're human beings and we enjoy more personal communication and connection with people. But your job is not actually to go and make the sale. Your job is to figure out on a daily basis, who can I meet with? Who did I meet with? And what's the result of that? What's the next step? And what great people, imagine you're doing this every day, one a day. You're doing this every day. You're going to have an amazing, old school word, Rolodex of people that you're in the mix with. And so what great people can you connect every day? When you become a connector of other great people, what you're doing is distributing wisdom. It's like what to get the guy who has everything. The most successful people, what do they trade in? They trade in wisdom. They don't trade in like knowledge, stuff that you can Google or read.
Wisdom and relationships, all of that.
Absolutely. And the best way to transfer wisdom is through great minds. If you're the connector of great minds in your industry and you're doing that authentically and you're really looking out for people, guess who they're going to think about when they think about real estate? They'll say to you, and this is, I always, as I started to get good at this, what I realized is what I wanted people to say when they walked away from me is, wow, I've spent a lot of time with real estate agents. I've never had a real estate agent who thinks like that. And everybody can do that because nobody thinks like you, right? But if you're in the game of business and you're having deep relationships with people, that's unique in and of itself. Now, if you're talking to them about things that matter to them and you're helping them solve those problems, you're going to build a really big business. It is that simple, but you have to be in that game. And that's a numbers game, right? So one a day after a number of weeks, a number of months, you have 200 meetings a year. So in some ways there's a numbers game. Of those 200, you'll find 6, no problem. Do this for 6 months to a year. You'll utterly change the trajectory of your business over the next 12 months.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a good reminder for me, as you're talking, my wheels are spinning because I'm in the hunting mode of attracting realtors to our firm. So how do we do that? We cold call, we send email, we don't send unsolicited email or text, but we're constantly fishing. Hey, we're throwing our line out there. We want you to join us, which is typically how recruiting works in this industry. And I am like, I've been doing it for 12 years and we have 800 agents here and I'm exhausted.
It's
And,
an
and
amazing
so
number, by the way. That's
thank you.
tremendous.
Well, it's fun, and I'm in no way complaining. However, it is time for me to find my six. And so if I 12 years in need to do that, and by the way, I need to do it for this podcast too. It's not just in my real estate business. So I'm going to employ these tactics. I want everyone to go out and purchase this book, guys. At the very least, you're out what, $10, and you've done something for your personal development, and at best, you've completely changed your whole idea of branding, marketing, and relationship building. So the book is called Find Your Six, moving away from traditional lead generation tactics to more influencer attraction model. And of course, it's all through value. Patrick is clearly a very authentic, solid guy who has a lot to share. And again, he didn't write this book to get rich, because you can't do that. He is doing it to give back to the industry. So let's support him. Let's go out and get the book. Visit his website, findyoursix.com. And we'll have a link, of course, to the Amazon page right on our show notes as well. But go to Find Your Six, subscribe to his mailing list, and get updated with everything, because he really has a lot of thoughts and opinions about. And by the way, his company has sold over $2 billion in real estate in not that long of a time period, where they're averaging 100 million plus per year or so. So this is a guy you want to listen to and you want to subscribe to, and he's a good guy. So let's make Patrick part of our six for now, and let's go subscribe and get his book. So findyoursix.com is the place to go. I'd love to have Patrick back on our show in the future, because he's got a lot of ideas that I think our audience needs to hear. So please let us know if you want to keep hearing Patrick's voice, although I already know the answer is yes, but we'll keep reminding Patrick to come back on. But before we log off, real quickly, if everyone could do just one quick thing for us, which is to tell a friend. Think of one other realtor that that could benefit, that needs to hear, who's struggling with their marketing, struggling with, maybe right now the season is slowing a little bit. This is a good time to reach out and tell them about our show, and send them a link to this episode. So send them over to keepingitrealpod.com. Every episode we've ever done is there. I think we have 350 something episodes. Go through the archives, tell a friend. It would really help us out. And also leave us a review. Wherever you're listening to this, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever, just let us know what you think of the show. Leave us a whatever star review, and it helps us improve and also get in front of more people. But on behalf of Patrick and myself, we thank everyone for being for listening and or watching. And on behalf of the audience and myself, boy, we really thank Patrick. He doesn't have this kind of time to come on a show. He's managing a huge team, a huge company. We didn't even talk about his business. But everyone go out to findyoursix.com, and that's SIX, not the number 6. So findyoursix.com, and buy the book, and then report back on how it's working. And we'll have Patrick back on the show very soon. Patrick, thank you very much.
DJ, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for what you're doing for our industry as well.
Thank you. See everyone on the next episode.